In your practice currently, so you deal with hormones. Are you treating patients at the moment, or are you
Yes,
more in the?
online only. I mean, I also use the carnivore diet, high fat carnivore diet as a treatment modality. So
Yeah,
that's sort of
right.
how, I mean, my first book came out in 2016,
Hmm.
quite some time ago, but I was talking about high fat carnivore and women's hormones and how the high fat carnivore diet, um, basically the menopausal symptoms don't have anything to do with menopause. So
Hmm. Yeah.
that's what I'm
So
talking about.
yeah, very good. Well, you were definitely ahead of the curve then, writing a book back in 2016 about that. How was that book received at the time? Is it being picked up more and more now,
Oh,
or?
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Since I guess the last 3 to 4 years. So yeah, I was kind of a quiet voice in the wilderness back in 2016. But I wrote it right around I went into menopause. So and I
Mhm.
had gone carnivore then. So I'm 61 now. That was when I was 52, so 9 years ago.
Mhm.
And I live in Italy, and at the time my practice was in Italy. I had to close my large studio with COVID. We
Mhm.
weren't able to see people in person for a while. And, treating osteopathically is very difficult if you can't
Yeah.
feel tissue. So I sort of moved my treatment onto online consultations.
Nice. And then, so how did you come to a carnivore diet? Because again, that would have been much further ahead than a lot of people came across it.
It all started, well, I remember there were a few periods in my 30s, a couple of times when I was doing a lot of martial arts training, and I did much better on beef at the time.
Mhm.
And I remember talking to my Sifu at the time, who at the time in actually in the US, concerned that I was only doing could only really digest beef. And so I remembered that when I went keto, I guess at 50, and then I started just removing vegetables. It was a pain in the butt to cook them, green chard and all those things, and we just kept going more and more and more meat. So that sort of happened slowly, and then I've sort of specialized in thyroid function. So at the time, and that at that year in 2016, I saw El Ambro Hearn's discussion about T3 and low carb, and that sort of sent me down that path as well.
Okay. So you still do that today?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And what have you
And
noticed?
my whole family.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my husband, my three children for the most part. My youngest just had a baby a year ago, so yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I'm still getting there with my family. Most of them come
Hmm.
around, but it's a work in progress. And well, that's great. So when you're dealing with people's hormones, you said that menopause, first of all, was not necessarily a product of estrogen, things like that. What are some of the symptoms that we get from menopause that can be helped with a carnivore diet, and B, that aren't really related to the hormones we think they are?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if I mean, maybe you don't know about this, but in the 80s and 90s, there was Suzanne Summers who was pushing the bioidentical hormones, and she
Mhm.
she took the seven dwarves and had the itchy, ugly, or itchy, sweaty, sort of the symptoms associated with menopause
Mhm.
that would be improved, itchy, bitchy, sweaty, things like that, which from the seven dwarves. And that is when I hit menopause, I Googled it, and these are the only things you see online, and I was quite upset by that because I didn't associate myself. I'm a Jiao Ga master. I went back and forth to Hong Kong. I trained, and so it's not something that I associated these symptoms were not what I was experiencing,
Mhm.
and it just really made me angry. So I did a lot of research into it, and it basically comes down to the fact that most 85 to 95% of both male and female steroid hormones are synthesized in the adrenals. So when your ovarian production of estrogen, for example, diminishes, it doesn't go away because they are still being synthesized in the adrenals. But medicine did not know that until 1988 when they saw men who'd been castrated, their testosterone levels went down initially, and then they came back up because the adrenals were continuously synthesizing testosterone. And this,
Mhm. And then so what about the carnivore diet helps with the adrenal
well,
function?
you're taking away stimulants
Mhm.
because you're not eating carbohydrates.
Mhm.
There's more fat. So the high fat is an important part of it. You make, if you look at the steroid hormone cascade, they're all made out of cholesterol. So if women are concerned, I mean, it starts over here on the left with cholesterol, then pregnenolone, then progesterone, and estrogen is all the way to the right of the cascade under testosterone. So
Mhm.
you can't make any of these hormones if you're not eating any cholesterol, which is what
Mhm.
most women do. They avoid cholesterol because they want to be rail thin, and also because they're told not to eat any fat because their heart will explode. So, I mean, I know my mother and my grandparents, my family's from the South, and they all stopped eating. They started using Crisco in the 50s, and then the Ansel Keys right around the time 1958, the Ansel Keys 7 country study came out. Right around that time was when I know my grandparents stopped eating animal fat.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty sad. I just saw an article that was posted about Crisco and how Procter and Gamble bought Crisco. It was things from the Germans, and it was like a machine lubricant for like
Yeah,
tank wheels, and then
yeah, exactly.
they paid off the American Heart Association $20 million in today's valuation to
Hmm.
lie and say that it was very heart healthy and better for the heart
Right.
than animal fats were, which is just insane. I don't understand how these people can get away with this. Obviously, they can say, well, it's not the same people that were here or whatever, but there was clearly records in their own documentation that they have done this, that one of their predecessors had done this. And so wouldn't they have an obligation to then say like, oh, hey, hold on a second, this was wrong. I mean, you're complicit at that point. If you're aiding and abetting a murderer, you're culpable in a certain sense, and they're aiding and abetting this fraud that has caused people to die.
Hmm.
And so that to me is just so strange. I don't know if
Well, it's sort of part of the whole, it hasn't just, it's not only now, this
Mhm.
started in the Victorian era, basically, which is what I talk about in my second book, Puberty and Adolescence. Fat and meat have been demonized since that time because of the Seventh-day Adventists. I know
Mhm.
you've talked about that before,
Mhm.
because of cultural views of women. Eating fat and eating meat made you carnal. So you
Mhm.
wouldn't want women eating it because you don't want them to be carnal, right? They just have to stand in the background and cook and make babies. So how it, women have been going through this a lot longer than, since 1958. So
Mhm.
I'm sure that they get away with it because that is what has been on the agenda for quite some time, culturally speaking.